Now this season, a lot of Arsenal players have already got credit for their brilliant work, and none more than Riccardo Calafiori, who has regained his left-back spot and been fantastic this year. However, Myles Lewis-Skelly does still exist, and after his brilliant performance against Olympiacos, we're going to analyse it and look into how he's improved this season, and just why that midfield position could be his in the near future. So let's get into it. Now, like many of you, it is quite clear why Riccardo Calafiori has been playing in the team this season. He is someone that has come in, he has creative freedom to basically roam wherever he wants, and especially when Eze is played out on the left, you have seen Calafiori come in and kind of acted like a secondary striker in order to facilitate space out for Eze. Some people argue that that's given too much freedom to the wrong player, but nevertheless, Calafiori has been able to work very well progressing the ball and giving Arsenal options, which has seen him get the Player of the Month award obviously last month. Now, this tactical implication and the fact that Eze is coming to the side means that Calafiori needs to play more as the width player. We have seen in the last game for Arsenal, against Newcastle especially, that Calafiori was actually acting like a left winger most of the time, being that width, being in the 5 forward players, and when Arsenal went 7 forward players, he was even further up there. That is obviously to get your players inside, whether that be Martinelli, whether that be Eze, closer to the goal, and also to probably show what is going to happen with Hincapié when he's fit as that more overlapping, marauding left back who can cross the ball in, create that width, and give Arsenal a new dynamic in the forward areas. Now, this has been the majority reason why Myles Lewis-Skelly hasn't played this season. We all know that his best work is in the middle. He's an incredible carrier, but an interior player, someone that really likes taking the space up and covering that ground in them central areas, and he's not someone that is going to overlap. However, I still think there is some work he can still do out there. Now, what I want to say is that I wasn't happy with the way that Myles was used against Port Vale just a couple of weeks ago. That was because he was being used as a traditional left back. He basically stayed on the width, but not even in attacking areas, basically in defensive areas, didn't really push up. And if we wanted to create an overload on this left hand side, we mostly got Marino to come over or one of the midfielders. We didn't use the left back. I don't know why that is, but Myles was very defensive in that game. Now, against Olympiacos, that did change though, with his heat map being very far over the whole of the left field, but you can see he was very much allowed to go forward, allowed to keep the ball, and allowed to do things he wanted. There was many times that Arsenal had the ball in central areas. He would invert like you usually would see. He'd let the ball roll past him and take on a player, going past a few. There's a few times he did this and won brilliant fouls and actually took 3 or 4 players on, which we know he can do brilliantly. We see it all of last year. However, to me, there was a few interesting parts about this game and where I've seen Myles already develop and change from a player that he is last season. Not only if you just straight away look at his heat map, you can see a lot of areas he's touching the ball in the wide stretches, which is not something he used to do before, and you see him being a lot more confident on the ball, which we will get into in a little bit. Now, first of all, this overlapping sort of wide player aspect, he isn't going to be the best player in the world at. We know what Myles is like, and especially in attacking areas, he maybe isn't as quick as some other players that we have in that area. He hasn't got maybe the most confidence in them areas as well, but he clearly doesn't like the angles out there compared to someone maybe like Calafiori, who I would argue is still more of a chaotic central player but can play out wide a bit more. And obviously Hincapié is the reason why he's come in. Unfortunately, he has not played yet. Now, something we have seen over the last couple of games, however, though, is Myles actually came on against Newcastle later on in the game. Jamie Carragher actually said he thinks it is a mental decision because Arteta saw that we almost conceded a chance after equalising and decided to bring him on for reassurance. And while that might be the case, and I definitely think in the defensive areas he's more secure on the ball, he's a defender at the end of the day and can kind of understand what he's doing, I think the way he was used in attacking areas is very interesting, which has not necessarily been used that much before. Now, Myles was basically acting as that left winger like we see Calafiori doing before he came off, and he was being a player that snuck behind the defender in his blind side near the width. Now, what I mean by that is when the defender would track him, what he would do is he'd pass the ball off and make that run into the central area as an attacker, or hold his position and wait for the trio to come down the left to make it work a bit more. Now, in this game, obviously the big chance later on before we scored the corner was Odegaard did this brilliant ball through to Myles, who makes this brilliant peel and run off of the defender and gets into the box and tries to put it across, but it doesn't quite work. Now for Arsenal, this is not something we have seen Arsenal use that much with Myles. Use him as a blindside runner, more as a winger option to get into the forward areas, and it's not really like a wide player because he is still coming inside into the penalty box, but it's still a bit wider than maybe you would have seen Myles in the past. Now this is something England have actually been using Myles for in the entire time he's been in the England team. He scored on his debut in the exact same way, where he comes in, he makes his disguise pass through behind the defenders, a late run you would say, and Bellingham, I think it was at the time, who put a ball slipped through past a couple of phases of defenders, and it worked and he ended up scoring. This is the exact same with Odegaard, who we know Odegaard loves making them passes, especially on the left hand side. If you want to see my explanation for that, please go and watch the video yesterday when we went into it a little bit more. Now that is a little thing I've seen us using with Myles, and I don't think that's necessarily a complete tactical overhaul or change. I think that might just be we needed to do it in the moment, so it was a solution we found in that moment. But long term, obviously we all expect Myles to come into midfield. Now this is where this inverting role sort of happens, and I also haven't been able to use it too much this year because we haven't needed to. I think broadly there's been some creative issues, but they seem to be pretty okay over the last 2 days since Odegaard's been back. And with the amount of talent and other players that Arsenal have moving in positions, sometimes we've had Calafiori invert in the middle, but it's not guaranteed, and it's not something we want to really assure that happens all the time, especially with Zubimendi being a little bit more secure, with Rice coming deeper a lot more with this kind of new double pivot weird system we've got in the midfield. Now Myles in the Olympiacos game had a lot of touches in these central areas from deeper positions, not as much as a left centre mid, as we would argue that could be Myles' best position, running into that space, which I still think he could be greater, but more as a DM, as someone who can sit deeper with the ball and be calm under pressure. Now we all know Myles is one of the best carriers of the ball, probably the best in our club by far, brilliant with his body and can use it to never lose the ball when it seems so easy to do so. But we're starting to see some real execution points from Myles in that game and throughout the last couple of minutes he's played in this season. What I mean by that is his passing level has improved heavily, or at least his confidence in the forward areas or anywhere on the pitch has got better. In the Olympiacos game, there's a moment where he picks the ball up in defensive midfield and he shifts it off to the right hand side with a brilliant lofted ball long, which we just haven't seen before. There's also a moment where the ball comes to him in a second ball, it rolls to him, and instantly he puts the ball in between the lines straight to Odegaard to get through. And this has not happened at one time, it's happened quite a few times of him instantly putting this ball through, being quick on the action. Something I complained about in pre-season was that he had such a hesitation around making the ball to Woklz, making that forward pass, but he doesn't seem to be having that at the moment, which I think shows the confidence he has regained, which is really good to see. And something that's also becoming really good is he's trying to mix his carrying ability with his passing ability. Although we haven't seen it too much, I think this is going to improve over and over and over again. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of times when Myles receives the ball in that deeper area, he's that sort of first phase of progression, because yet again, like, we have different players come back, which you mentioned in the Odegaard video, all the time to make it fresh and different. Myles can take it past a player in this area where it is very risky, and he can shift the ball between the lines, bringing players towards him, making players come out of position. And alongside Marino or other players who move around a lot, like a Rice would also be great at this, he is finding them gaps. And it's not even just about that, he makes runs off the ball, he gets into them attacking areas and is much more confident, which is a really big improvement to what Myles has been seeing before, although he was excellent last year. And there's some interesting points about him as well, because we are using him as a carrier in different areas. We now see him be that width from when Arsenal kind of break the press, not always centrally, sometimes they man mark our central access really well, so we have to go around the block and get through, which we did a lot last season, and he is there to do that. We've seen people like Calafiori been much more likened to carry the ball in the width first and then run into the middle, but Myles can do that as well, and he's becoming so much more confident, and his releases are becoming really good. And I think nothing epitomizes that more, as he has finally seemed to unlock not only the ability to cross, but the confidence to cross in that half space area. Probably the biggest, I think, notable annoyance that people had about him was that cross. He didn't want to do it, he was a bit reluctant, and although he's picked out some good passes, I remember the Marino one against Real Madrid, there's other ones as well in that sort of half spacey area, he's not someone that is always going to be the best there. He doesn't really do through balls there either, he kind of passes it across quite a lot of the time. However, against Olympiacos, there's a few crosses he does in that area, and we gave him that space from brilliant play with Odegaard, Raya, everyone involved, and he took it. Obviously, the one very early early on where he does a perfect cross into Martinelli. Should be a goal. Martinelli, it comes off his shoulder. He misses from point blank range almost. But that is a great goal by Myles, which under not a lot of pressure, you have to say, but it's still the execution. And I think there's one he does a couple of minutes later where it actually is a decent cross as well. I think it gets cleared, doesn't go to any of our players. But the fact that I'm seeing him being confident in that area to do them crosses is just something we needed. And the more you do of them, the more you'll get better. That is obviously something that we've all focused on. We saw the Gabriel Heinze video with him trying to learn it in pre-season, and it's really good to see he's starting to really develop and learn the sort of skills that the team are teaching him. It seems like you give this guy a couple of months to do something and he'll figure a way to make it work, which I genuinely think is incredible. And all of that is down to attack and work. I think genuinely his attack and work was the big place that needed to improve. I have seen improvements over the times he's played for the club, but I just see a lot big of improvement this year, especially in the last games we've actually seen him play. Defensively as well, I've got to say he's becoming more secure. I don't think he is a walk-in yellow as much as he was last season, which I think made sense because he is an aggressive type of defender, and that's just going to happen sometimes, especially given his age. But we know how good he is at getting his body in front of players and riding a tackle, so they basically push him on the floor and he gets a free kick. This happened so much against Olympiacos, where every time they basically tried to press him or push up that side or kick the ball long, Myles would get in front of them, then go on the floor and we'd get a free kick. It's a lot of the time, it's very smart, and that really helps us regain possession. Now, what I will say, I think all of this kind of sets up though for him to be the left centre mid or DM backup into the future. Like, I think even his defending out wide could be suited to someone like Rice, and he could cover for someone if they go forward. And we've seen it in our midfield. Odegaard, Zubimendi, and Marino. One of them was back at all times. The other two were going forward, and it changed all the time. Or albeit Zubimendi was probably the one the deepest the most. I think if he learns these attributes, there's definitely a position in the left centre mid for him. I genuinely think that's a brilliant spot. Obviously, it's a little bit difficult with the fact we've got Rice there right now, and he's been brilliant in this sort of quarterback deeper role. But it does seem like we are trying to develop Myles to be a little bit like Rice. We've seen the deeper passes, we've seen the play out of the possession, so maybe that's a point to prove with that. But he can always be a backup, and obviously Marino is a little bit more suited to that, I think, in terms of what Arteta wants in pressing and other nature. But I genuinely think Myles is an intelligent kid. He'll learn it very fast, and I'm not worried about him at all. I don't think he's a left back for the future of this club. We've bought Hincapié, we've got Calafiori. There's other players that can probably play left back if you had to. Realistically, I don't really think that's the spot for him. He can play there if he needs to as a third option, but I want to see him in midfield a little bit more this season. That would be nice to see. But let me know what you guys think about Myles in the comments, and let me know what you think about this video as well. Thank you guys for watching. I will see you in the next one.